Welcome to the CEO Stylist podcast, where two unlikely CEOs come together and rewrite the narrative of what it means to be a CEO stylist. Yovanka, Loria and Kirsten Harris are on a mission, giving stylists permission to join the movement of artists breaking the mold of what is meant to be for the hair industry and creating the life and schedule of their dreams. Fast forward through many failed attempts and lessons learned in the process, it's time to level up the playing field. It's time to call BS on what's been done before. Yovanka and Kirsten are ready to share it all, defying the odds of the industry and teaching you how to do the same.
Welcome back to the CEO Stylist. I'm so excited for today's episode. Hello, Kirsten.
Hey, how are you? We are excited. This is our first international guest.
This is our first international guest, and I'm so excited to invite Anianne Rivera. Did I say it correctly?
You sure did. Yep.
So I'm just going to get into just explaining a little bit of Ani's bio, and then we're going to get stuck into conversation, and Kirsten's going to help us answer a few questions. Kirsten, do you want to touch on the topic of what our podcast is today?
Sure. We are, I guess because you two are both from the same industry, and when I say that, I'm not talking hair, I'm talking hair extensions and creating hairlines. So I guess the overall topic that we want to unpack today is the unknown process of creating a hair extension brand. And really, you know, this is Ani's opportunity. I've got a few punchy questions to ask you and for our audience, you know, to really hear, because it's a big thing, particularly in Australia, that's taken off over the last 2 years. I think definitely since COVID, where, you know, there's some active suppliers overseas, let's say in China, that are really actively getting into DMs of hair salons, any hair salons really, that are offering hair extensions and offering hairlines and making it seem on the surface so easy. So I think that this is going to be really good to get insights from both of you of what that actually looks like. I definitely know, after working with Yo for many years, all is not what it seems. Like, you know, I just think it's the duck on the surface that looks like it's gracefully swimming, and then underneath it's, because there is a lot that goes on. And I think that, you know, as big creators of hairlines, we've got a responsibility to really be able to talk openly about what that actually looks like. It's not as easy as it seems.
Without further ado, I'll just introduce Ani. So with 15 years of experience shaping stunning hair, Anianne brings a wealth of knowledge to the podcast stage. Not only a licensed stylist, Ani has spent the past 5 years as a director of education for a beaded hair extension method and currently trains another innovative hidden bead technique. Her passion extends beyond technical expertise, and now she empowers other stylists through social media coaching, helping them build brands and create passive income opportunities. Having also launched her own hand-tied line collection, which is exciting, Anianne possesses first-hand understanding of the intricate details involved in crafting flawless natural results and now creating her own hairline. How did I do? Did I say that right?
You are perfect. You're amazing.
Well, welcome, Ani. Thank you for joining us. What time is it over there when we're recording?
It's only 2:30 in the afternoon. It's easy.
Exactly where are you based?
So I'm in Orange County, California. Like, think of I'm a little bit south of LA.
Oh, okay. I know OC. We said off air that, you know, I'm a little obsessed with watching real estate shows, and they've got, who are the twins?
I've actually got
Selling OC.
Yes.
Selling OC. Sorry. It's probably like I have no idea what you're talking about. Those shows.
I know in general. I don't watch a lot of reality TV, but I know that's very big down here.
Oppenheim Group, the twins, and they've got these shows anyway. That fills my void at 2 a.m. when I'm like, what can I watch? Let's watch another real estate show. But today's show's not about real estate. It's about hair extensions. So I guess we wanted to kick it off by asking, first of all, for you to give like a brief introduction about your business, your previous hair extension training, and now your wholesaling line.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and I could listen to you guys talk all day long. Your accents give me life, and I love it. So like Yovanka said, I've been doing hair for 15 years and extensions for pretty much all of it at this point. And that's all that I do. I don't do like just cuts or colors or bends or anything like that. I focus on extensions. So when the opportunity came to have my own hairline, I knew that the thing that was most important for me was just doing it different. I think there's a typical standard set in the industry that things are sold at X price, they're sold in packs, everything is very beachy, it's very cute, it's beautiful, and I'm a little more Addams Family than I am like Barbie, I think. So I decided to just make it a very, I will say, gothic brand almost. It's called Mourning Hair, like mourning the death of someone. And it's actually based off of Victorian death hair, that in the Victorian era, when someone would pass, they would actually take some of their hair and make art out of it and bracelets and jewelry in order to mourn the death of that person. And it's called Victorian death hair, but they sometimes called it mourning hair. And when I heard that, I fell in love with that name. So my branding is definitely different, and we specialize in hand-tied hair.
Right. And tell me about the hair extension market in America. Is it still really popular, or is it?
It's huge.
Right.
It is absolutely massive. At this point, I'm more surprised when artists don't do extensions than when they do. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Would you say it's also, because I've noticed in America, it's like every second person is doing their own hairline as well. Like it's become so oversaturated, right?
Well, so that's the same. So I imagine, like, China really does service the world globally in terms of that supply. So they are very active. I think since post-COVID, they've definitely been able to, really solidify their market. But I guess I'm not a hairdresser. I don't come from this industry, but, I've owned salons. So I definitely remember a point in time in Australia where hair extensions were just, peaking. And now it seems, I think the same. It seems that if you're not doing them, why aren't you? You're behind. But how long has it been a thing?
Oh my goodness. So I started my first like serious method back in 2015. And before that, and that's my first like hand tied method. Before that, I already did tape-ins, beaded, and keratin bonded. So they've been around for a while, but I think with social media and how easy it is to put a brand out there and like show your work, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Because I agree, Yovanka, I've had so many stylists reach out to me and they're like, how did you start a hairline? I want to start a hairline, but just for my salon. And I'm like, I respect that, but let me tell you what it's actually like.
It works for sure.
Yeah,
and I think that's what we're both excited just to shed some light, because I know I've been at this game now for 6 years and I've learned so much. And we'll share a little bit how Ani and I started working together and how we're just partnering up on a few projects and helping each other. So it's been a massive learning curve for both of us, and every time we learn more and more, it just makes so much sense. So we just wanted, and I get messages like you all the time, can you please share? And I think what Kirsten was saying before is that I've always been that person. Everyone's like, yo, you make it look so easy. And I'm like, yeah, because I just don't complain about shit. I just roll up my sleeve. But now that I'm, getting in my late 40s, I'm getting pre-menopause and my emotions are peaking. So I'm going to be a lot more vulnerable today and start sharing about how fucking hard it really is and peek behind the curtain of the misconception and how it all works. Because now that we've got each other to support as well, and now that we both know how it works, not just in America, it's a global thing. And now that it's getting bigger and bigger, and the question is all the time, the hair quality is just diminishing, and so many brands are also, I wouldn't say even misleading, because I want to be careful what I say, because they're only going by what the factories are telling them as well. So maybe Kurt, let's get started in the questions, because once we get a little bit down, we'll be able to explain a little bit more.
This is going to be her greatest challenge, that I'm talking and she has to
shut her mouth.
She knows I come from a place of love.
I do. I'm like, I'm just excited, right? It's about getting excited.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the first question about, so your intro about your business. Do you own a salon, Ani?
I do not, and I will be honest, I never want to.
Right. Okay. Thank you for your honesty. And you're a hair extension trainer, now,
Mhm.
or
I am
part?
for the Luna method.
Luna method. Okay, amazing. And is that a well-known, how popular is that, the Luna method in the States?
It is very well known in the States. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very popular.
And what's unique about that method?
So I think the thing that's most unique is, so the owner, her name is Ashley Leeper. I always say she's autistic, and that is very important in it because for her, the attention to detail and learning that has gone into not just like, oh, just throw some wefts on there and they'll be fine. Everything has a reason, everything has a why, even down to like the degrees that your row should be. Like there's so much reasoning behind everything. And I say that Luna, what makes it unique is it doesn't have a lot of rules, but it has a lot of guidelines, which is scary as an artist because you kind of want to be told, do this exact thing. But it's actually really freeing as an artist because you kind of get to do whatever you want as long as you follow those like 4 rules that she has.
Yeah, amazing. And is your education in person or is it online?
It's all in person.
Okay. Have you selected that for a reason?
So she's starting to do a little bit of online, but the reason in person works is because honestly, artists just learn better that way. Like,
Yeah.
I think they like the idea of learning at home, but then they watch the video and they start to panic and they're like, I need someone to hold my hand and move my thing and do. And so it's just easier to work with artists in person.
Intricacies of teaching someone. Yeah, you can only learn so much. I agree. And, this is my hope that one day that we can get Ani and Luna out to Australia to share, because I think the more safer application methods that we have, because you need the method and you actually need the quality of hair to match in unison, right?
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Wow. And now wholesaling, which we're going to come back to at the end, aren't we?
Yeah.
That's more recent though, correct?
It's less than a year. I mean, 8 months maybe. It's the scariest thing I've ever done in my whole life. And I don't think anything has made me cry and sweat more than this project. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. So how do you communicate to your audience the distinctive features of your hair care line that set you apart from others? I know you mentioned that hand tied was the method that you chose. How do you communicate that when I know that there are so many weft options available on the market?
I love that. So I think how would I word myself? I think I'm very bold in what I'm willing to say. Like, I'm not going to talk trash on another method because that's not my style. But now being in I feel like hair extension creation world where you're actually making the hair, there's so much that I have learned that I honestly never knew was even a thing. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know these were problems. Like, there's so much that I learned, and I have no problem telling people that of like, here's the really great things from a hairline, but here's everything, frankly, bad that you don't even know is happening behind the scenes. And like, here's how to look out for it.
Right. And the bad things, the negative, is that through experience?
Well, I've been doing hair for 15 years, so I've experienced bad batches and hair that fades weird and hair that sheds off. Like, I've had pretty much everything happen as a stylist. And I think that's why for me, and I'm sure Yovanka, you understand because you also have a salon, it's so important that everything I do has the utmost integrity. Because I remember what it was like starting extensions and you have to buy so much hair and you're putting it all on a credit card because you can't afford it. And then if the quality is not what you and your client expect, now you're out of pocket that money. You have to buy more hair out of pocket. Those are expensive mistakes that can be made. And I don't think there's a larger mistake or like issue you can come across in the hair world than having like bad hair extensions.
Oh, it always falls back on first the artist, and then it always falls back, on the brand and the company. It's just been a big misleading things, because what Ani's also, I'm sure, realized is, it's funny how you say that, listening to you now saying, because I remember I was in that position when I was losing $5,000 from clients in that experience, because I was being marketed that it was European hair, that you could color their hair, that it would last, and it wouldn't. But then you're just obligated because you have to
Yep.
You know, you have to fix that, and the compensation has to come out on your end. And then when you swap over to being the company and the brand, and then you're shelling out over 6 digits just for not sample of hair, but so for an order of hair. So when you compare the $5,000, it's still the same feeling, but the pressure is 10 times greater. And now you also have to explain and educate the stylist of what can go wrong and what can happen, which we're going to get into as well, which I'm excited to share.
And I guess the other thing is, you know, when you're in the comfort of purchasing from a local supplier, you just have to purchase what you need. But when you are venturing down that being a wholesaler, you're not just buying 1 or 2 sets. You've got you've got your ass on the line with an MOQ.
Correct.
That is quite significant. And I think from the outside looking in, this has been the biggest shortfall in salon owners going into this. It's not like, you know, they've never invested in a hairline before. They've never invested in a library, what we call here a hair library. And suddenly they're dealing with a Chinese supplier and they're going, cool, the MOQ's like, you got to buy 15 sets of that in every color in order for us to start. So,
yeah. Which is, they don't always advocate that in the beginning, because what you're saying with the DMs, they're messaging you, oh, would you like to supply?
Yeah.
They don't tell you that. Even for me, that's why I was able to pass that information on to Ani. Even for me, when I first got into it, I was completely oblivious. I was like, sure, I can just order when I want. I can just do this. And, you know, which we'll get into factory hair color. Once you also start having your own custom colors, you have to buy kilos and kilos in order for them to even color it. You know, then you have to also invest in a coloring, which Ani nearly fell off her chair when she found out. We had that conversation and stylists are like, well, can't I get it cheaper? Can't I get this cheaper? And, you know, once we shed a little bit more light on it, how it works, I'm hoping that people will get a better understanding.
Yeah. Okay, I've got another question for you, Ani. Is there an unknown process of creating a hairline? So including any hidden costs, hefty testing, or trialing periods, or
Dude, everything. When I tell you this process knocked me on my fucking ass, it did. It was because I thought, I'm like, you just tell the factory you want a level 8 neutral. The factories don't speak hair. They speak formula colors. So when all of a sudden it's, oh, I can't say I want it 1 shade darker. I have to color it perfectly to send it perfectly to the factory to have them replicate it. Like, that was shocking to me. I will never forget one of the first conversations I had with Yovanka, and we were talking about the MOQs, the minimum order quantity, every 6 weeks. And I was like, oh, is it, you know, X amount, or X amount? And she was like, it's this amount. And it was not a 6 figures. It was multiple. I went, okay. I lost my voice. When I left that night, I told my fiance, I started crying, and I was like, I've never heard numbers so big in my life. And every 6, like, I was drenched in sweat. And I remember thinking, like, I'm going to lose sleep over this. I'm going to make it work, because everything always works out for me, and like, I'm going to do it right. But there's so much you don't even think about, down to packaging and shipping. If you want to put cards in there, if there's any kind of paper that has to go in there, color rings are so expensive. Like, I've basically just pooped my pants every step of the way, because I'm like, this costs how much? What? And I'm like, okay, that's all right, shocking, but if that's what we do, it's what we do. And I'm also realizing, to do things the correct way, like, you can't cut corners. Nope. And because when you cut corners, that's when you get bad batches of hair, and hair that's made cheap and like really shitty. So to do it right is expensive.
And I remember saying to Ani, if you're going to get into this and you think you're going to become a millionaire because of the process, please don't think that, because I think, you know, that's what a lot of people think. And even when I first started 6 years ago, I never, ever, ever began this process thinking I'm going to do this for money. I was doing it because there was, back when I started, Kirsten, you remember, you couldn't even get hand-tied hair here.
No.
I was learning from Ani, which is what I was explaining in the end. I was learning from Ani, which I wanted to go do her course back then, but I couldn't. I had 2 little kids. I couldn't get over there. I couldn't get there. And then when I learned about, you know, how much it was going to be, and I remember thinking, oh, well, I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this because this is going to help so many people, right?
Yeah.
If I can get this right, and I think this is also now where I keep hearing from even, artists reaching out from America saying, I think I'm just going to do this on my own, exactly what you said. I just want it for my salon. And I'm like, that's what I thought too, but it does not work. It does not work like that because you're not going to get the quality of hair. Bottom line, you're not going to get the quality of hair, which we'll explain a little bit later what the ABC quality standard is, but you're not going to get the quality if you don't have deep pockets and you cannot fund it and keep up with the requirements, and you cannot keep up with your own custom line of colors, because you can get factory standard colors at certain pricing and at certain quality, but that really is, and I know I was speaking, Ani and I always speak about it, and Kirsten off camera as well, that with our hairline, the margins are so low. They're not high. They're not like a product wet line or a color line. So I think this is where people get confused, because, I know I've worked with reps who, tell me the percentage of markup on colors and wet products, and it's massive. So when you don't have that markup, I said to Ani in the beginning, when you have that, you've got to be really, really careful and strategic where you want to spend that money, because to me, the first thing is customer service. You don't have customer service and the quality, none of this will work. And if you're gonna be cheap, which is what this industry does, they'll try to compensate and save because they're not looking at the big picture. And this is where we're running into problems.
Okay, I've got another question. So as a consumer of hair extensions and, being in the industry for a long time from a salon ownership, I've tried a lot of different hair extension lines and methods. I'm curious to know, though, how do bad batches happen in manufacturing?
Yovanka, would you like to start?
I think it just elaborates on what I was saying. I think maybe, Ani, do you want to explain, and then I'll go into detail, because this is what I learned from you, which I knew that this happened in the factories, but I didn't realize that this was going on with certain brands about the ABC quality and how purchasing behind that happens, and then we can elaborate a little bit on
absolutely. So this is one of those things that I did not know existed until I started having my own hairline. And there's something called an ABC hair company. Nobody will ever admit that they are that type of company because it's not actually good. So here's what that means. You as a consumer, let's say Sally goes to buy hair from this company. The first order she puts in will be quality A, meaning it is chef's kiss, spotless, beautiful, great quality, super soft and silky, amazing. Because obviously they want you to keep buying their hair. Now, from that point, depending on how much you buy will dictate the quality of hair that you get. So if you buy a medium amount pretty frequently, they're going to put you on B level hair. So it's still good. It's not bad, but it's just not what you had the first time. And let's say now you're someone who's a newer stylist, meaning you don't actually have a lot of extra money to purchase hair, or you're just getting into extensions and you're trying to build up your clientele. You're probably ordering a little bit your orders are fewer and further between. So at that point, they actually bump you down to C quality. And the biggest problem with this is they don't tell you they do this, and you are still paying for A quality hair. So that's why in a lot of brands, or some brands, I won't say everybody does this because they don't, there's a lot of, you will hear some artists who are like, the brand is amazing, I love it, it's perfect. And then there are other stylists who are like, are we talking about the same hairline? Because what I got was fucking garbage. Like, it was not good. It tangled, it matted, it barely lasted 3 months. And that's why that's happening, because in order to, like, I don't want to say make a quick buck, but that's a bummer. It's kind of what it's about, is money. They're giving different qualities of hair depending on how much the person purchases.
And it extends further. So they're essentially being penalized, not being told, and being sold, X whatever quality hair at the higher price point. Which, funny, when you told me that, I was like, that makes sense to me, because that's exactly what the factories do. They just don't tell you. So this is what's happening. Everyone wants to have their own hairline, but if you're only purchasing, a smaller amount, you're going to get the crap hair quality. And
Yep.
this has happened before, and this is when I started to get into it. I was 6 months in, and I was clearly told by at that point, if you don't keep up with, sustaining your orders, your quality is going to drop. Your color's going to come, it's not going to be consistent. That's what I was looking for, consistency. So that's where, you have to really think about, if you're going to do this properly and you're thinking on a smaller level just for salon, it's really not going to work.
Wow. So are you then saying, even with the best of the brands, if they're not regularly ordering a particular color within their hairline, would they get a B or C grade quality, or overall?
Overall, I think.
Overall.
Okay, interesting. So here's one for you. We've noticed here in Australia, there's a few suppliers in China, because we all like to keep that information sacred. And I've done buying international. I've been in international logistics, so I know how China works. I just haven't done it with hair extensions. So, I know from my buying days, your factories in China were sacred. You're not sharing that information. However, there is something that has become a theme here in Australia, where suppliers that are trying to be reputable, I shouldn't say trying, that's a bit harsh, but the unknown brands that are really trying to build up their profile, they're now doing this behind the scenes factory processing in China. They're taking their cameras, they're like doing these road shows where it's like, you want to build your hairline in Australia? I'll take you to China and we'll do a deal with our factory. And we're finding this polarizing and fascinating. I come from a business perspective going, how the fuck why are they doing this? But what are your thoughts to that approach? Like, what's your insight?
Showing the process, and it's really because, I've been asking to go to our factory for years now, and clearly you have to be invited, because it really does go by how much you're spending and the relationships that you build, because it is proprietary information, right? And also what they're sharing on, now that I understand the process in depth. And we've always kept it somewhat sacred. And I feel like personally, I've never been really aggressive in my marketing approach, because I feel like I didn't need to. I knew that we had the product, that was the quality, it was making waves. But with what they're sharing on, and the factories are inviting them, they're still going to be mainstream level entry hair, and they're still just showing them parts of the process, because once Ani and I explain the actual processing of hair and how it works, because they can make it look like, oh, this has been washed in acid wash, this has been dipped in silicone, but they're still missing out a proprietary part of the component, and that's also showing how they color the hair. So they've got, when we get into contracts with the factory, they're not allowed to expose that, nor do they want to expose it as well. So the one that Kirsten's speaking about is really fascinating, because we want to invite a couple of the people on our podcast as well, just to clean the air and find out where it's coming from as well. But going back also and integrating the bad batches, because Ani and I really speak about this in depth, and what makes our hairline so different is that the processing, the way that it's done, they still show you that, on there, this is washed for 15, 20 minutes. But in reality, our hair, the color process essentially takes weeks and weeks that it's done. And it still has to be disinfected, and it still has to be colored, and there's still a massive process. And you're not really going to know, because the factory is going to tell you, this is what our process is. And when you get the hair, and Kirsten, we've experimented with so many different hairlines now, Ani as well. What happens with stylists, they get the hair and it looks great for 3 months. And then after the 3 to 5 months is where everybody runs into problems.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to maybe elaborate on that part as well? Because I know, back in the day, hair, even the hair that I was getting from the big brands in America was only lasting 4 to 6 months.
Well, and I think that that's what they do, is that the process is, like, I say our hair goes low and slow. And I feel like that's a very hairstylist term. Like, when you're lightening someone, you don't use 40 volume developer to blow open the cuticle and lighten their hair. You go low and slow. The hair stays healthier. It stays on longer. It doesn't snap off, and you still get the color you want. I feel like that's how I always describe our process with cleaning the hair and coloring it, doing all of that. It's low and slow. And I think that's where overly siliconed hair comes in. Like when people get it and they're like, it feels like Barbie hair. I'm like, uh-oh. I
Yeah.
don't think that's a good thing, because that tells me bad batches can come from hair that is processed too quickly, too aggressively, and just put in a also very almost like aggressive silicone bath in order to make sure that it feels silky, but that doesn't stay on the hair forever. And then at that point, you're ending up with hair that's been trashed and sold to you at a pretty high cost.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is there, Ani, are you noticing, I don't know whether you take notice of competition, but is it a trend? Is it a trend overseas where they're showing the insights and what's going on behind the scenes in China with factory and processing?
Yes, I won't say it's a trend. I feel like some people do it, and not to like shit on them, like, hey, if you want to do that, great. But I think it's also anyone who's in the hair world knows it's, what is that movie, like Fight Club? Like you don't talk about Fight Club, you don't show Fight Club. Like the factories that are used really are I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you kind of secret, which is hilarious. And I didn't realize that when I started getting into it. Like I didn't know it was such a closely guarded secret, but it makes sense. So I know some people like to show the process, but even if they do, it's only to a point. They're not showing the entire thing. They will cut it off and say like, I can't tell you the factory. I can't tell you how we clean it. I can't tell you how we color it. I can just tell you it's ethical, and that's pretty much it.
And maybe sourcing. I don't know.
They'll say like the country it's from, but that's pretty much it. And even then, I feel, depending what country they say from, it's a little suspect sometimes.
It's really like, it's so funny because when I started, 6 years ago, I was encouraged to mislabel my hair. And I get it. I really, really, really do get it. Call it European hair. It's still happening. Russian hair. I mean, I still get this. I went with this hairline because it's Russian, but it's a few $100s cheaper. Like, how does that even make sense? And why would you even think, but it is a secret that's coming, I think, within our industry. People have known. I don't think the consumers know about it a lot because they're still learning about it. Do you know what I mean? So that's why we just got to keep, because you don't want to piss off the industry, you don't want to piss off other brands because they're just trying to, and they've been misled by factories telling them what to say. So we need to get to the bottom of where it's happening. I feel like there's still a couple of brands that are promoting Russian, but it's just called Russian hair. If you actually ask them, they might say it's not Russian hair. We just call it Russian hair.
Like they can get hair from China or India. They can get hair from anywhere. But if it's processed in Russia, then all of a sudden they can put the Russian tag on it, but it's not true Russian Slavic hair. And I do think Russian Slavic hair exists, but if it's cheap, you better be real careful because true like Russian Slavic hair is incredibly expensive. Like it's not gonna lay.
It is. You cannot mainstream that. So the difference between virgin hair and raw hair, because both Ani and I have raw hair, the difference between virgin hair is that it comes in its natural state and it's in a ponytail bundle, right? Whereas raw hair, it's still in its natural state, but it would be coming from different donors, and then they collect healthy hair, which is from young people. They've also got Indian hair, which also makes sense. Indian hair that, they collect from the temples is a lot of the time coming from older hair that's already depleted in nutrients. So you can already see that people might be showing, the technique and the inside of the cleaning of the hair, but it all comes down to really like healthy hair. Then the quality of hair, it's such an ABC standard. And most people, it's funny because I know going into this, I was like, where do you want to sit on the thing? How much money do you want to put into this? How much? And most people are just going to go for the cheaper or mainstream option because it's more affordable.
Wow.
Yep.
Right. And I don't know about you girls, but even when I was younger, I never shopped. Even though if I didn't have it, I would work harder to get it, to find it, to be able to, shop at the brands that always had value, that would last longer. And that's how I've always been. And that's how I've always, going to stay. I was never going to compromise making this mainstream because I've also, being a B2B company like Ani as well, everyone's like, well, you need to get this out. If you have investors, they're like, you need to make this accessible to everyone. And you really don't want to open yourself up to that because you're going to get into the same problems of what we're getting what's happening now and getting the hair at a more affordable price. And it's gonna reflect back bad on our industry like it did so years ago with the tapes and the bond. I mean, that was a method issue, but I do feel like that was still happening. Would you say, Ani, with quality even back then?
Oh, absolutely. There's always been like bad hairlines. And to think of it, there's really only one hair company that has openly admitted, like, hey, you can buy this, which is like quality A hair, and this one, which is a lower quality, which I'm like, I respect you being at least honest about it. Like, give the consumers an option. Well, and I think another problem that comes in is I don't know how many DMs you get a week, but I get a million from Chinese factories going like, hey, do you want to start a hairline? I'm like, I already have one. And I've had so many people tell me, they're like, yeah, I always try it. And they're like, it's not good hair. I'm like, yeah, it's not good hair. I know. Why are you wasting your money?
Oh yeah, that's how this whole trend started. Anytime as a salon owner you were promoting hair extensions, I can say, in the day when I had a bunch of salons and we were doing hair extensions, I'd get 3 or 4 DMs a day. And there was some persistent suppliers in China by first name, like Loria comes to mind. She was in my DMs.
Like Loria, my mate.
Unrelenting for months and months, 2-3 times a week. I'd never respond. But I can appreciate, if you don't know any of this, if you're not educated in any sort of process with this, that it would be quite tempting to try it, because that I've seen their pictures, they're pretty good.
And remember, I have shared this. I think I did share this on one of our first podcasts, but just to reiterate and just to remind everyone, they're called agents. So they technically work for what they represent. It's like a kind of a distributor. So what they do,
layers in China,
and they represent multiple different factories. So what they do well, if they're not getting it from this factory today, they're going to be getting it from the next factory. And that's where the inconsistency happens. And remember when I sent Vlad to China as well, and you're on the internet thinking that you're speaking to a factory, but you're clearly not. You're meeting him in a back alley, and you never even get to go to the factory. It's very, very rare. There's only a few factories that will actually allow, public access. That's why going back to ours, they're actually the main haircut, well, they've been one of the main, there's only a couple in China, one of the main hair collectors that factories buy from our factory. So that's why even when I was explaining it to Ani, I was like, that's why it's so different, because then they buy the hair from the main factory, but then also they take it back to their factory and then they break it down into their processing. And they're also mixing, I don't know if everyone's heard the term fallen hair. So every factory has their own bundle of fallen hair, and then they include that in the process. And that's obviously where the bad batches come in as well.
Right.
Just trying to make bang for their buck.
Interesting. So, Ani, I've got a question for you. So we all know business has its ups and downs, and we've all been there. But what are some of the biggest struggles that you have faced in your business, and how did you overcome them?
Oh man. So with the hairline, I will say, I feel like everything has been a struggle because everything is so new. I mean, even down to, like, for example, like I said earlier, like the hair color, you have to color it perfectly. I remember there was one point, there was one specific blonde color. It's one of those things where I knew exactly in my head how I wanted it to look. And every time I would color a weft, it did not turn out perfect. And they have to be perfect because, like I said, the factories you can't say, oh, it was almost right, just a shade darker. That means nothing to them.
Yeah.
I remember at one point literally standing there looking at, I think I was about 9 wefts deep at this point, just crying over my blonde hair going, I don't even think, do I even know how to color hair anymore? Can I even do this? Like, it's so much pressure that is on you. And I will never forget my first order, because I did like a soft launch and I sold out completely already. And let me tell you, there is nothing more stressful than getting a DM and the first line says, hey, so I used your hair, and you're just like, can I emotionally handle opening this? And honestly, I think that's one of the hardest parts is the emotional turmoil you will feel from beginning to end. And like right now, my second order is being made and I'm already like, Yovanka, I'm like, remember, they don't have to rush. They can take their time. We don't have to rush anything. It's fine. But I feel like that is very stressful. And also just making sure you've thought of everything. Because if you have the thought of, I'll just make pretty hair and that's enough, like with respect, you're wrong.
Yeah.
It is the marketing, the branding, the photo shoots, the video shoots, the primary packaging, the secondary packaging, the website. Oh, you want your website locked? That costs more money. Oh, you want to do a pre-order? That costs more. Like everything is so much more expensive than you could ever imagine. And that is stress. So I also tell people, it's one of those things like where salon owners say, don't open a salon, but also open a salon because you're going to love it. That's how I tell people, I'm like, look, if you truly want to make a difference and you want your own hairline, do it. But I'm telling you now, it is the most expensive, borderline traumatizing, emotional, mental, like it will mentally ruin you for days because not even days. There was, I think, a 2-week span. I just would wake up and I'm like, did I do everything? Are people going to like my packaging? Are they going to think I'm some weird goth girl? Are they going to avoid me? Like you don't know if what you're doing is right and you're not going to find out until you start selling. And that's,
and you get feedback.
It's horrifying. That is horrifying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because, when you're just supplying to your own clients, like install to your own clients is easy street. But when you suddenly venture into that wholesaling where you're selling to other salon owners.
Dealing with hairdressers that come after you with vengeance, if you don't articulate or, Ani's been I'm like, are you ready for this? Because you're going to get hate. You're going to get people that turn on you. You're going to get people that don't understand, and I know both Ani and I pride ourselves on customer service and, doing the right thing. I don't know in America with other brands, because I hear it here, and that's part of the price point is with their customer service. There is no customer service. They're like, you bought this hair, you're out on your own. Do you know what I mean? Does that happen still in America? Is that still a thing?
I think that is pretty much every brand. I'll say probably excluding a few. And then I think that that's what people don't realize. Now there's another hidden cost to this. Whether you're paying someone to be your support or you are using your own time, there is a cost associated with that. Like even now, like my line Mourning Hair, it has its own private phone number that actually comes to me. I will have staff eventually, but it's one of those things of I tried to keep my price literally as low as I possibly could. My goal, like Yovanka said with her too, it wasn't, I'm going to be rich. It was, I can control the quality. I can make the thing that I have always wanted with the honesty that I had always wished I had. But with that, I was like, okay, that means I'm going to have to take a little bit more on my back to make sure that I handle things until I have a process and a team. But like even that's expensive. That takes up a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're the things that will, you'll get kickback, and it will be the fall of the brand or fall of what you're trying to do if you don't have that support and that customer support in place, because that's what stylists, that's what, not just stylists, but in any brand building, that to me is one of the most important things. So I think to anyone out there that's listening that wants to get into it, if you're going to get into it, like Ani said, we're part of now this community where we want to support others if they want to do that. Ani and I are willing to help. Do you know what I mean? To help someone on their journey, but know what you're getting into. And like you said, if you're not prepared for all that back hidden costs and the shipping and the setting up teams and setting up everything and being, you're going to have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're going to have to take it out loan, and it's possibly going to be on the back of your home loan. So, I knew that I took that risk. So now when I cop shit, I'm like, I know what, it doesn't affect me because I know what was at stake, and I know my intentions were pure and were real, because if I was willing to risk my family's future and believing in something so much and putting my name on it, that it's got to be amazing. So, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it.
I've got another question for you, Ani. So do you have any exciting projects coming up? What's next for Ani and Mourning Hair?
Everything.
Don't give it all away, but give us a little teaser.
I literally yesterday finalized my website. So the launch is, I mean, a stone's throw away. And even that, I'm like, are we sure? It's very scary. Actually today I started launching merchandise. My first sweatshirt is out. People kept asking for it, which I thought was so funny. And I'm like, yeah, if you want merch, I can make merch. So that's coming up. And I have some very cool, very exciting collaborations in the works as well, which I feel like I can't talk about yet. But when I tell you I am screaming on the inside, I am screaming. Like I think, you know what, when you are in the hair community, because I agree, Yovanka, people can be mean and they're mean and scary. And that's one thing that I was very open about when I finally announced, I'm like, I'm doing a hairline. I was like, but I'm going to tell you now, don't you be mean to me. My exact words were, you guys are some scary bitches and don't be mean to me. Be nice. And I will do everything in my power and integrity to make sure you have a wonderful product. Just be nice. And
give you feedback in the right way.
Damn, man. Yeah, just don't yell at me. So I'm glad my brand is very like honest like that. But what I think is cool is when you are so honest like that, I feel like you attract more people like that. And I feel like recently, like my bubble's been expanding. I've been meeting more artists and it's been cool. So Mourning Hair has some very cool things in the works. So I'm
in the show notes, we'll drop your
handles.
We will drop your handles and also and to anyone in Australia, do you think, Ani, maybe down the line, do you have intentions to maybe come to Australia, ship to other countries? Is that your...
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
you know what? I want to come to Australia so bad. I'll just bring it myself. I will put it in my bag. I will personally deliver it to Australia.
We'll hold you to that. Right. I've got another question for you. What is your hair industry pet peeve? Something that you see often or may have seen that drives you batshit crazy?
What is something that drives me batshit crazy? A lot of things some days. Do you know what? I think it's one thing that does drive me insane is I think the grace and the understanding and the kindness that we want from our clients, a lot of artists are not willing to give that to an artist or a brand. And like an example is, I feel like when you have a new client, it really takes a couple of appointments to really get to know them and give them the most perfect hair. And we love that grace. We kind of expect it. We communicate that. And so if you do someone's hair once and they leave and they're like, Yovanka was the worst. She cut my bangs a millimeter too short. I hate her. It's like you would never want that for yourself. You wouldn't want to be badmouthed so publicly, but let's say K18, who I love, by the way, they send you a bottle that accidentally cracks in the mail. And all of a sudden everyone's like, did you see this garbage that K18 sent me? I hate them. They're the worst. And it's like, did you even give them a chance? Did you even think to just reach out and let them try to rectify the problem before you started bad-mouthing them, or all of a sudden you wrote them off and you're like, they're dead to me because they made one mistake? Like and I think now I'm even more empathetic having a hairline because it's not if you have a bad batch, it's probably when. Like, just to be honest, like every car has a lemon, every roof has a leak.
Yeah.
It's human error. Nothing is perfect. So I think if artists could just remember that the grace that we want from our clients is the grace we should try to give companies and products as well, I think that would make the industry so much less toxic. I don't know if they're willing to do that, but I think that would be wonderful.
No, I love that. Can I ask her the next question?
Sure.
Okay. If you couldn't pursue...
She can't help herself, right?
I just want to ask one. So if you couldn't pursue this career or industry in an alternative universe, what type of job do you think you would have chosen instead?
One of two jobs. One, I would either be a lawyer
Love that.
or I would love to have an animal sanctuary where I saved any and every animal and then I rehabilitate them or find them homes. Like if I could move to Costa Rica and have a sloth sanctuary, life would be complete.
Love that.
Oh, that's so cute. animals. So could I just ask, how many pets do you have and what do you have?
I have 4 dogs, 2 Frenchies, a Belgian Malinois, and then a Shepadoodle, which is a German Shepherd Poodle.
Oh,
But
yes.
I have to say, I move in 2 weeks to Colorado. We bought 10 acres, my fiance and I, and he promised me too many goats, too many Highland cows, and a lot of chickens. So I'm getting a hobby farm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Throw a llama in there. You can get a llama too, right?
That would be wonderful. If I could get a raccoon.
We'll send you a kangaroo.
Don't toy with me because I will accept a kangaroo happily.
Amazing. Do you want to ask the last question, Yo?
Okay, so tell us your funniest business or a hair story if you have one.
Oh, my funniest one. What comes funniest? I feel like probably my first haircut I ever did out of hair school. For some reason, I will never forget this poor man, and I just apologize if he ever remembers me. I remember my hands were shaking as I was going to cut his hair. And I remember thinking, he's never coming back to me. I have never sweat so much, but let me tell you, that makes you work a lot harder in that moment because that is just sweat inducing. But I feel like I have tripped in front of clients. I've dropped 1,000 things. I've never spilled glue on a client. So honestly, that's a thank God. Hallelujah for that one. But my life is filled with embarrassing moments that I try to never think about again.
Yo, didn't you have a story about scissors as well?
I had scissors. Yeah, I have also dropped glue on someone's hair, and like to this day, it still traumatizes me. So I get it completely. We all have them. It's funny when you look back on it, just not in that moment.
It's never funny in that moment. Although, you know what? This isn't funny, but it was traumatizing for me. We had an extension class not long ago, and the wefts, when you're installing them, they're never wet. They're always dry. And I remember asking the student, I'm like, why are your wefts all wet? And she's like, the crosshairs really bothered me. I'm like, that's weird. Okay, just like, don't do that anymore. And the next day she's like, hey, Ani. I was like, yeah. She's like, remember when I told you the wefts were wet because of the crosshairs? I go, yes. I'm like unhappy at this point. I go, yeah. She goes, yeah, that was a lie. I just kept stabbing my finger with the needle, so I bled all over them, so I just wet them down. I was like, I go, you savage. I go, that is unsanitary. So that's traumatizing for me.
That's traumatizing for me.
My goodness.
Oh my God. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I mean, our first guest artist, I've certainly learned a lot. I continue to learn in the space that you guys work in. It's pretty exciting. And I know you two are working on some cool things together. We have a little bit of a teaser about that as well?
I just wanted to say, because I didn't want to take up the beginning of the episode to introduce Ani, but you know, Ani is someone who's I wanted you guys to obviously see and hear how special she is, but not honestly how special she is. When I was first starting out, Ani was on a podcast as well while she was working with another company, and she was probably my saving grace, because if you know me in my circle, Kirsten, you know I don't watch reality TV shows. I don't follow celebrities.
You're not watching real estate shows in America.
I've never been fond of celebrities, but you know, there's a few people that have really made a mark on my life, and you're one of them, Kirsten, and Ani, you're one of them. So now that, you know, Ani's come full circle, and this is to anyone else who's listening out there, you know, I've been following Ani for probably 9 years, right, Ani? And we've only just
very long, yeah.
Last year joined forces and worked together. And this is really a testament to show someone else out there. We all bitch about social media. I know everyone gets overwhelmed, but this is the beautiful part of social media, that we've been able to connect. And now I'm proud to also make you a part of our community. And I hope moving forward from here as well, Ani and I are going to be doing some lives together and helping other artists. And Ani's also helping share the love of wild hair in the States as well, because she's been a big fan of it as well for some time, and also doing some lives just to help other artists who are struggling with, you know, we know so many are wanting to leave the industry, wanting to, you know, quit hair. So I think Ani and I both know how that feels. So she's going to be coming on to do a few lives with me. Is there something else that I've left out, Ani?
I don't think so. I think what is so cool is that even though you and I are in the same industry of creating hair, we've also found our own niche. I only do hand tied and you do like the genius micro weft. And I think it's so cool because I don't want to make genius wefts and you don't want to make hand tied wefts. But I know they're also very popular in America. So I love sending people to you. I'm like, if you want a company you can trust, and you want wefts that are really good and also blonde micro wefts with a brown seam. Please stop using permanent markers. Thank you. I'm like, go to Yovanka. Her extensions are the best. You're gonna love it. I tell everybody about your hair. Yeah.
And I just love like where you are the typical girl's girl. And I think you know how important that is in my circle. We don't have enough of that. We don't need everyone, but we need the right ones. And you are that person. So I'm very grateful to you. As you know, we tell each other all the time. And now we're publicly saying it. So
amazing. I have no doubt that our listeners are going to get something out of this, and those that are, tempting the water. This is not to scare you whatsoever, but it's really getting an insight by two powerhouses, in my opinion, that have had a lot of experience. And would it be too forward of me to say, for any listeners that want a little bit more feedback offline, can they DM you guys? We'll put the handles in the show notes and reach out, because I think it really is about, helping each other. I think it would save the traumatic stories of those that think that, stepping into the world of creating your own hairline's that easy, because it's not. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being open, and it's been really cool. I've loved talking to you guys today. That's it from us.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap it up.
Thanks, Ani.
We'll let you enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we're going to kick off our day.
Bye.
Thanks, Ani. Take care.